Good day, I welcome all of you. I'm Olga Tamanova and Media Center Ukraine in Ukrinform. We are beginning our work. So today we have the first celebration, the Day of Ukrainian Statehood. So I would like to congratulate all of you with it and to wish you the thing which unites all of the Ukrainians, that is victory. So now we are beginning our briefing with the traditional briefings of the forces and of defense and security. We will be speaking about the events and dynamics at the front line. Our first speaker is Hanna Malyar, Deputy Minister of Defense of Ukraine. Please. And you thought that Ukraine is just like that. Ukraine is super. Ukraine is exclusive. It had all of the roles of history on it. All of the types of tests were against Ukraine. It is now has the highest level of resilience under the conditions of contemporary world. It is priceless. I begin with the quote of the classic of the modern Ukrainian literature, Lina Kostenko, because today we have a special briefing as it is coinciding with the first celebration of the Day of Ukrainian Statehood. And Lina Kostenko, as nobody else, has really precisely mentioned the idea of the reality we are living now at. So I do hope that the next day of our statehood will be celebrated in peaceful Ukraine. The war is ongoing not for 155 days and not for 8 years, but for hundreds of years. And the biggest mistake of the occupier that the Kremlin has sent the slaves to take the free people. Our defenders are confidently keeping the front line. The superiors and the diplomatic services of the state and other authorities are tirelessly working at their front line, as well as all the Ukrainian people. We will definitely end this war as victorious. So we will not give any of our statehood which we had so hardly fought for. The Ministry of Defense of Ukraine is doing everything possible to create the preconditions for the further planned by the General Staff measures to liberate the Ukrainian land from the Russian occupiers, the weapons from the partner countries which we made deals about, and we know how to use it, and they are skillfully used by our defenders. It makes our victory closer. We are supported by our partners and their help will be just increasing. Ukraine will be defended tirelessly by the courageous Ukrainian warriors, which are exciting for the whole world already. And simultaneously, we are increasing cooperation with the partner countries about the treatment and rehabilitation of our wounded warriors abroad. The friends of our state are actively helping in the issues of the equipment for the military hospitals. The military doctors keep their professional frontline reliable manner. We are proud of them and we every day thank them for the saved lives of our warriors. During this week, the security situation around Ukraine was still complicated. The armed forces and other armed formations of Russian Federation were going on with their combats and warfare on the territory of Ukraine with the aim to encircle and destroy the defense forces of Ukraine at the east of Ukraine and to get to the administrative borders of Luhansk and Donetsk oblasts or regions, and also to conquer and to take the parts of Kherson, Zaporizhia and Mykolaiv regions. In more details, you will listen about that from the representative of the General Staff. The military political superiors of Russian Federation are trying to urgently restore the military capacities of the formations and units which had their losses among the manning of the staff during the combats and warfare on the territory of Ukraine. With this aim, the Putin propaganda machine has activated the activities of the so-called Russian Empire movement. They are conducting the intense mobilization of the members of this movement, in particular its militarized wing, the Imperial Legion, to take part in in the combats in Ukraine. This is the cynicism of the narratives of Russian propaganda that for the implementation of the officially declared aims by the Russian superiors of the so-called special military operation and so-called denazification of Ukraine, they involve the forces which are openly into neo-Nazi ideology and are in the lists of the dangerous terroristic organizations. At the temporarily occupied by the enemy and by the adversary territories, the Russian Federation is trying today to conduct economic, educational, industrial integration of our Ukrainian territories to Russian Federation. In particular, if we speak about Kherson and Zaporizhia regions, as of today, the occupier is trying to develop at these territories the whole network of their banks, the Pромsvyazbank, and also three networks of their mobile operators. As of today, the Russians are blocking Google, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and other social networks there to make the access impossible for our Ukrainian citizens to information. At the temporarily occupied territories, they are going on with the illegal deportation of Ukrainian children to the territory of Russian Federation as if for the medical treatment. They go on with forced passportization of Ukrainian citizens. We need to mention that Ukrainian citizens do not want to take Russian passports and IDs because they understand and feel that using the Russian passport, you will have the blood of Ukrainian citizens on your hands. This is the bloody passport, and to take this passport means the legalization of all of the war crimes of Russia on our territory. But the Russians are making them, blackmailing them, and intimidating Ukrainians for them to get Russian passports, and in this way to legalize the war crimes and actions of Russian Federation, which they plan to conduct in September. In particular, we're speaking about the so-called referendums. The majority of the population, that is our citizens of Ukraine, which are now forcefully staying at the temporarily occupied territories of Kherson and Zaporizhia regions, do not support the occupiers. As of today, the occupier cannot fill the vacancies which they are trying to create, establishing their criminal regimen at the occupied territories, and the Russians are forced to fill these vacancies with their own citizens who are afraid to go to the temporarily occupied territories because they are afraid of shellings and just they're afraid of war. We need to say that there are certain examples, for instance, Zaporizhia or iron ore factory, when not a single employee of the enterprise agreed to cooperate with the occupier. Our people are waiting for liberation. We are proud with all of you. We are proud of your force and strength, and we will definitely liberate all of our so far occupied territories. We're coming now to the traditional block, that is the provision of the armed forces. We did not have a briefing for 2 weeks. We skipped the last Thursday. So now we are concluding as for 2 weeks, since the 14th till the 27th of July. The Ministry of Defense during these times has given to the units of the armed forces of Ukraine 56,000 of armored vests, more than 60,000 of helmets, 43,000 pairs of shoes, and more than 21,000 of military uniform units, and more than 4,000 of winter jackets. Because I remind you, we are already preparing for winter. Soon, according to the deals awarded, we are awaiting for some of the individual protection means, 20,000 of armored vests and 18,000 of helmets. And again, I'd like to emphasize that the main priority of the Ministry of Defense was to provide the rhythmical character of the deliveries and supplies. In particular, in June, to the armed forces of Ukraine, they were given more than 100,000 of armored vests, and according to the results of July, we'll have the same indicator. So during those 2 months, more than 200,000 of armored vests. Even now, about the armored vests and the helmets, we have created a very substantial reserve. And also we have the increase of the part of Ukrainian producers, which is really pleasant, because in particular in July, the Ukrainian producers have manufactured, according to the Commission of the Ministry of Defense, the same number of body armors or armored vests as they have produced during 4 months, that is March to June. Those are not just thousands, those are dozens of thousands of units produced by our local manufacturers. Now about the payments for the warriors. As I've already mentioned, the monthly payments, those are the remuneration for the ranks, for the experience, were transferred to the military units in time and in full scale. Additional payments, or as we say, the military payments, 30,000 and 100,000, they are still being processed because those are enormous amounts of payments. It will go on for several days, and those who have not still got this money, don't worry, just please wait a bit, you will get those payments. And about the victories in our legal front line, because the legal service of the Ministry of Defense is at war efficiently, and all of the contradictions and discrepancies are solved legally for the Ministry of Defense. In particular, you know that as for the legal sphere or in the court proceedings, we are fighting against the suppliers of services and goods who were not providing everything appropriately. For instance, we have such a supplier as for food supply. This contract was awarded in 2017, and the products were of low quality and was delivered not in time for our armed forces. The Ministry of Defense in the court proceedings has taken from this unfair producer 5.8 million hryvnia for the untimely and not full accomplishment of the contract provisions. As for the landlords, as far as you remember, our legal service of the Ministry of Defense is conducting the high-scale campaign to get back the lands which were taken from the Ministry of Defense. Every Thursday we report about such decisions, and today we have one more verdict of the Economic Court of Khmelnytsky region. The requirements of the Ministry of Defense are satisfied fully, and we are getting back to our department more than 95 hectares. And according to this pre-trial verdict, just a moment, I will tell you who has to give it. Khmelnytsky City Council has to provide the decision. As for the defense supply, we also have the court file as for the supplier who was not again properly committing to his obligations which were in the defense supply. We're speaking about the military properties like hard disks which were of inappropriate quality, so they had to be replaced because of the supplier. The legal service of the Ministry of Defense has had some of the measures, and on the 20th of July 2022, the appeal court did not change the verdict of the court of the first level, which obliged them to supply the military property for the sum of 66 million hryvnia, according to the state military order. And I could drive your attention to the fact that these inappropriate supplies and some of the economic entities which are in any way trying to sell their services or goods to the Ministry of Defense, sometimes they organize the informational campaigns to discredit us. These campaigns are not that expensive to organize today, and sometimes you can see the campaigns on discrediting of the system and the procedure of procurement, and sometimes those campaigns are against the competitors who are already the suppliers for the Ministry of Defense. I'm finalizing my briefing with an address to all of the Ukrainians because today we have a celebration. This is the first time when we celebrate the Day of Ukrainian Statehood. We need to repel Russian occupiers from Ukraine. We need to finalize the course of our ancestors, to stand for our statehood and not to leave this war as a legacy for our children. Happy Ukrainian Nationhood Day to you. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes. Now we listen to Oleksiy Hromov, Deputy Head of the Main Operations Directorate of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Oleksiy, what is happening at the front line? Could you please tell in more details about that? Good day. This day of Ukrainian statehood, we had the following situation at the front line. The main forces are still concentrated of the adversary at the east of our country to provide the full control of, on the territory of Donetsk and Luhansk regions. I'd like to drive your attention that this is ongoing for more than a week, for more than several weeks. They're trying to provide so-called full control of the territories of Donetsk and Luhansk regions, but they do not have any success. They do not conquer two regions. At Volyn, Zhytomyr and Kiev directions, the situation during the week was under control. The probability of the offensive of the adversary from the territory of Belarus or invasion of Belarusian troops into Ukraine is low. But, however, we do not exclude these probability of special operations from the units of Belarus Republic together with the special forces and private militants of Russian Federation. Some of the military provocations in the borderline regions of Homel and Brest regions to create anti-Ukrainian moods among the Belarusian population. There is still the threat of the missile and aviation strikes against Ukraine from the territory of Belarus during the next 3 months. As for Chernihiv, Konotop and Sumy directions, the activity of the adversary is characterized by aircraft strikes in the regions of Bilopile, Yastrubine, Volodymyrivka, Vovtivka, Miropile of Sumy region. The mine throw artillery shellings, including the use of the MLRS, the multiple launch rocket systems, against the positions of our military along the state border. Since the beginning of the month, from the territory of Russian Federation, the adversary has conducted 198 shellings, among which 47 shellings are of Chernihiv region and 151 of Sumy region. The biggest amount of shellings is close to the settlements Yasmin and Bilopile of Sumy region. As the result of the aircraft hits and missile strikes since the beginning of the month on the territory of Chernihiv and Sumy regions, there have been destroyed 15 objects of civil infrastructure, including some of the important ones. As for the Kharkiv direction, the adversary is concentrated to take and to retain the frontiers and going on the aircraft shellings against Kharkiv, Chuhuiv, Verkhny Saltiv, Stary Saltiv, Mospanov, Tishivka. The biggest part of missile strikes is against Kharkiv city and Chuguiv. On the 21st of July, as for the objects of civil infrastructure, there were 3 missile strikes from the MLRS Uragan. 3 civilians died, 26 people were wounded. On the 25th of July, against the civil objects of Chuhuiv town, the adversary also provided the missile strike with 12 missiles of MLRS Uragan. The adversary at the Kharkiv direction is actively using the saboteur groups to find the weak and narrow places in the defense of our armed forces. As for Slovyansk direction, the adversary during the last 2 weeks did not provide active offensive actions, and they went on with missile strikes against Kramatorsk and Slovyansk, and also some of the shellings with the use of the whole spectre of their armament. As for Donetsk operational region, the adversary is concentrating his efforts to repulse our units from the established positions at Siversky, Bakhmutsky and other directions. along all the front line with the use of all the spectrum of available weaponry. Because of the losses, some of the military units of Russian Federation were taken to restore their military capacity, and with the aim to create the offensive, the adversary is conducting the transfer of military units from the 2nd Army Corps and from others units to this direction. The most complicated but fully controlled situation is in Siversky and Bakhmut directions, where the adversary is trying to provide offensive to the direction of Siversk and Bakhmut. During the recent weeks, the adversary has conducted missile and aircraft hits in Bakhmut, Konstantinivka, Soledar, Spirne, Chasiv Yar, Samogirya, Pokrovske, Berestovo, Novoluhanske, Grigorivka, and also against Vuhlegirska heat power plant. As for Kiev, Zaporizhia regions, the adversary went on with systematic fire impact onto the defense forces of Ukraine. Around Avdiivka, Novomykhailivka, Kamenka, Vuhledar, Mariinka, Krasnohorivka, New York, and Kamensk, the aircraft missiles were provided. The missile strikes of the adversary were under Opisky, Kurakhove, Vidradne, Shevchenkove, and also Vesela Dolina. We need to mention that not a single settlement at the offensive direction of the occupier was avoiding their missiles or artillery armament, the so-called Liberation Army armament, and in some of the settlements there are no residential blocks left. In this way, the Russian troops are ongoing to bring Russian world to the settlements and villages of Luhansk and Donetsk regions, destroying schools, kindergartens, hospitals, and leaving the local residents without accommodation, and they deprive them of their right to exist in the civilized world. At Kryvyi Rih and Mykolaiv directions, the main forces are concentrated to deter the offensive of our troops, to strengthen their own troops in all of the direction of the reserves from Donetsk and Luhansk directions. Because of the decrease of the number of warehouses of ammunition at these directions, the activity of the shelling by the adversary was decreasing. To restore their capacity, they update their reserves from the obsolete armament, including the ones from the eastern parts of Russian Federation, and our troops are going on gradually liberating Kherson region from the occupying forces of Russia. During the last 2 weeks, Ivanivka and Lozove were liberated. This week, Andriivka was liberated. The adversary is going on with the missile and aviation hits against the civil infrastructure objects, which witnesses about the targeted decisions about Russian superiors as for genocide of Ukrainian people. Since the beginning of the month, there were 49 missile strikes and 44 artillery strikes, which fully destroyed 28 objects, including 4 schools and 9 residential buildings. Partially, there were 137 objects destroyed, 7 of them of transport infrastructure, 11 educational institutions, and 29 residential blocks. The groups of defense forces go on to provide the defense and operation within the operational zones. Within Volyn, Rivne, Zhytomyr, Chernihiv, Sumy, and Odessa regions, we conduct the necessary retaining and securing national frontiers. Within Kharkiv, Donetsk, and Luhansk regions, where we have the most intense combats, our units are providing defense combats, deterring the forces of the overwhelming adversary's forces. We go on the defense operation. The situation during the week has been characterized by the counter-battery fight and intelligence and surveillance to find out the critical objects of the adversary, to plan the fire against them. To conduct the awards for the military staff of the units of the armed forces of Ukraine and other military forces, the courage and heroism of the warriors in the fight for independence and territorial integrity of Ukraine, respecting their will for victory, and also to provide the traditions of the Ukrainian troops, we go on with the awards of the military units and subunits. Since the beginning of the our military aggression for courage, stage, there have been awarded 18 brigades, 2 regiments, 1 separate battalion, 1 division of the ships, and also 1 medium airborne ship. The state awards were given to 20,520 military servicemen. The Hero of Ukraine award have become 151 servicemen. In the end of my speech, I'd like to emphasize that more than 1,000 years ago, Kiev Duke Volodymyr the Great took the state decision to baptize Kievan Rus. This decision was the choice for the family of European countries. Now we are fighting not only for that historical choice, we are fighting for the future peaceful and civilized life of our children, for the will, for the opportunity to live your own life at your own land, for the eternal values of Ukrainian people. Every day the armed forces of Ukraine are fighting not only for Ukraine, but also for Europe, which is close by spirit for us, for the international security, for the future peaceful life in the world, where not a single country will be able to force their empire views and their wishes. We will definitely prevail. The God is with Ukraine, with our heroic people, with our invincible armed forces, and this is the most important thing. Thank you. I give the floor to the Major General Oleksiy Nadtochiy, head of the Operations Office of the Main Directorate of the National Guard of Ukraine. Hello, dear presenteers. And traditionally, the role and place of the National Guard of Ukraine in the repulsion of military aggression as of the 27th of July. The military units of the National Guard of Ukraine within the defined groups of the armed forces of Ukraine are going on to take part in the defense operation in Slobozhansky, Donetsk, Pivdenny Bug operational regions, in the deterring of the offensive of the overwhelming forces of the adversary around Kharkiv, Slovyansk, Siversk, in the defense of the cities of Kryvyi Rih, Mykolaiv, Zaporizhia, where the main forces are concentrated to the deliberate denial of the advance of the adversary in the directions of Berislav, Kryvyi Rih, Guayapole, Zaporizhia, and also the retaining of the parts of the seashore, the defense and security of the objects of critical infrastructure. As for the northern western operational zone, Volyn, Polisia, and Siversk operational regions, with the cooperation with the State Border Service and Armed Forces of Ukraine, the National Guard is providing the securing of national frontiers with the Republic of Belarus. With beyond the military zone, in the southern western operational zone, that is Lviv, Carpathian, Bukovina, and Podila operational regions, we go on to provide stabilization actions and territorial defense. Within the stabilization operations, the mission accomplishment of the territorial defense, the main forces were concentrated to defense and protect the important state objects, the guard of the defense of the state officials, authorities and consulates, the objects of the critical infrastructure, and also the retaining of anti-saboteur and anti-airborne reserve. Besides that, to support the land forces of the armed forces, the aviation of the National Guard during this report period has provided 23 helicopter flights. They organized the area medical evacuation and transport transfer of 27 helicopter flights. The intelligence units of the National Guard have found 691 aim of the adversary, and the observer posts 138 out of them, and also the UAVs have found out of them 553 of them. Because of the shelling of Russian troops, the infrastructure and residential blocks of Ukrainians have been destroyed, and unexploded missiles and shells of occupiers create the danger which is the threat for the life and health of the local residents. The demining groups of the National Guard go on to observe the territories of the communities which are affected by the adversary's fire, like Kryvyi Rih district, Zelenodolsk and Apostoliv communities at Dnipropetrovsk region, and also settlements of Berislav district of Kherson region. The outcome, the engineer units have got rid of more than 1.5 thousand of exploded objects, and also we are demining the pools at Kiev region, have observed the 15 square kilometers of the Dnieper river, and the results of the isolation measures at the checkpoints. The servicemen of the National Guard, both on their own and in the cooperation with the National Police, the law enforcement of the armed forces and the territorial defense, 24/7, they go on to accomplish the missions at the checkpoints. As of now, the National Guard has accomplished the tasks at 181 checkpoints in 13 regions of Ukraine. 35 of them are in Kiev city. The outcomes of the special missions, there were suspended for the criminal and administrative crimes 3,847 persons, in particular the criminal 608 ones. Altogether, since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, there have been suspended more than 22,000 of people. Out of them, 377 with a suspicion in the participants of the saboteur group. There have been taken and seized 138 firearms, approximately 12,000 of ammunition, and approximately 82 grenades, 3 mine throwers, 18 kilos of exploding devices, 6 anti-tank mines, 22 artillery shells. The examples of the successful military accomplishments during the recent times. We go on to destroy the air games or air goals of the, for instance, on the 16th of July, with the use of the multiple launch rocket system, we shot down the cruise missile, and on the 17th of July, we shot down Su-25 aircraft. There were 7 goals hit, 6 aircrafts and 1 cruise missiles. By the way, it was done by the hero of Ukraine. During the anti-terroristic measures, together with the security service, the National Police of Ukraine, the State Emergency Service at Chernihiv region, the National Guard has found out 1 machine gun, 5 ammunition units for the MLRSs, and 2 shells of 125 millimeters. The servicemen of the National Guard, with the help of the civilians, have found and taken the person who was taking pictures of the objects of strategic significance. He turned out to be the person from Kamchatka region, but he has the citizenship of Ukraine. In the cell phone, they found out the phone numbers which belong to the regions and operations of cell phone coverage of Russian Federation, and the pictures of important objects of strategic significance. The National Guard is doing whatever is possible to provide treatment and restorage of the life of the servicemen who were wounded and injured and came back from the capture. Having the deals with the countries with whom we cooperated for a long time, we provide the treatment and rehabilitation of our warriors abroad. As of now, abroad, we provide the treatment and rehabilitation for 45 servicemen of the National Guard. We conduct the work and go with the negotiations to go on with the treatment of our National Guard employees further on. We are grateful to the countries, organizations and volunteers which are helping Ukrainian servicemen to come back to the armed forces. Thank you for your attention. Thank you. Now I'd like to give the floor to Leonid Baran, Director of the State Border Security Department. Please, what is happening now at our borders? Thank you. Good day, dear ladies and gentlemen, and my sincere congratulations with the Ukrainian Day of Statehood. I would like to begin with the words that almost for 31 years the Border Service of Ukraine is reliably protecting the national frontiers, restoring the independent Ukrainian state. And for 155 days, the State Border Service is going on to courageously protect Ukraine within the defense forces and to provide the security at the parts of the borders where the situation is still very complicated. I will mention that the Border Service is still keeping and retaining the positions at the east and south of our state under constant shellings of the adversary, repulsing this military aggression. We are acting together with the armed forces and the National Guard of Ukraine, according to the whole idea of the General Staff. Taking into consideration the peculiarity, we're actively using the border units of the UAVs, which are efficiently acting not only for the civilians and intelligence, and also to hit against the positions of the adversary. At the border with Russia, with the formation of the adversary to provide advances are not observed, but still Russia is going on concentrating some of the forces, first and foremost to demonstrate their presence and also to deter our defense systems at the frontiers of the Ukrainian state. The aggressor is still going on with military provocations, shelling from their territory the border regions. The fire is conducted daily by the adversary. They use artillery, aviation, and any other shelling against the civilians. It is not also only the threat for the military, but also for the civilians, because the civil infrastructure is being destroyed as well. Recently, we see more attacks like this at Sumy region. During the last week, we have registered 78 shellings of these territories. Altogether, since the 10th of April, since our units have got the state border, the enemy has already conducted more than 1,000 shellings. 56 of them were using the aviation. We are also establishing and fortifying these positions. Last week, the head of the border service has personally checked the mission accomplishment at the border and the measures on the fortification of the border regions. The border service, together with other defense forces, are doing whatever is possible. They provide the intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance of the territory. They provide some of the obstacles, checkpoints, and also they're working on all the necessary measures of interaction between the units of the forces. At Belarus part of the state border, we do not see substantial changes of the situation and the character of the actions of the armed forces of Belarus. They still go on securing the frontiers from Brest and Homel parts. Sometimes they are showing off, providing military trainings, including the artillery shelling. Still, the manning, the staff is not changing. The number of people is not changing. They still rotate some of the units. There are no signs of the offensive from Belarusian territory. As for the border regions of these countries, they provide the engineering establishment measures, and also we register the active use of the radar systems to make the observance over their territory more complicated. I will add you that the border with the aggressor country and the border with its satellite and the Transnistria segment at the border with Moldova, with all of the forces of Ukraine, is still strengthened. We are doing whatever is possible to protect the border and not to allow the escalation of the situation. We also need to mention that gradually we get back the citizens of Ukraine from these countries. During the last week, we've registered the arrival through the closed checkpoints of 138 persons, and since the beginning of April, more than 1,400 Ukrainians have come back home. As for the EU countries and Moldova countries, which are friendly, the average daily crossing of the border is about 90,000 people to both directions, approximately 20,000 of transport vehicles. Some days this indicator was almost 100,000 persons per day. We still see the intention of our citizens to come back to Ukraine, but still I need to see that this movement is very dynamic. Before the weekend, we can see that the citizens are leaving more, but the difference is not that substantial. During other days, more people are coming to Ukraine. Then this difference can be up to 10,000 people. So as of now, there are no queues and lines for leaving of the vehicles from Ukraine after the zero customs clearance was cancelled. So you can follow the situation at our websites. And considering the military mode and also the actions of the state border for some of the categories of persons, the state border service has improved the works of the chatbots at the official website of the institution and in Telegram app for people to get to know as soon as possible about the rules of the border crossing, some of the updates and restrictions about men of the age category 18 to 60, and to get lots of other answers for their questions. To use these resources, undoubtedly you can save your time in comparison with your phone calls. Besides that, we conduct the permanent communication with the neighboring countries to provide common measures to increase the throughput capacity in the checkpoints, especially about the trucks, because knowing the blockage of the seaports, we have to increase the logistics at the western borders. And also because of the restrictions at the border crossing, the border service daily do not allow some of the categories who have to be restricted. We did not let for 158 people to get through the border, and also we take the violators who try to cross the border illegally, both in the checkpoints and beyond the checkpoints, using the fake documents. There were 25 of them during the last day like this. Since the 24th of February at the green part of the border, we've took more than 4,300 of those in fact perpetrators, and they were trying to use fake documents. To conclude, dear colleagues, I would like to assure you that the border service of Ukraine is going on to responsibly, with commitment, try to accomplish all of the missions to protect our state. Thank you, all of you, for the attention. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes. I'd like to to invite all of the speakers for the questions from the journalists. Dear colleagues, you can pose your questions using the microphones, and don't forget to introduce yourselves. Ukrinform, Marina Kožuchara. If I may, I've got the question to Oleksiy Nadtochiy. Which provocations could be possible close to Odessa port, taking into account the opening of the green corridors? And will the military accompany the ships with grains? And the second question, is it true that we had some information that in the south about 10,000 of Russian servicemen can be encircled? Is it true? As for the provocations which can take place in Odessa region, together with other structures of security and defense sector, we are following this situation. According to our experts, there are some of the options how events can develop. We have some of the measures conducted against that. As for the accompanying, well, which measures? Sorry, I cannot tell you now. But there are some of the measures taken. As for the accompanying of the transport with grains, the armed forces of Ukraine, directly the Navy, is ready to conduct those measures, but all of that will be done according to the development of events. The General Staff has created the coordination group, which is dealing with this issue directly. As of the encirclement of Russian military, as for the offensive of our troops, we would like it to be true. We would like that to be 10,000 of servicemen. But we understand that the adversary, when he hears about the threat of encirclement, he will take back. We should, of course, have the prisoners of war from Russian Federation, but que sera, sera. Whatever will be, will be. We are doing whatever is possible. I will not tell you in more details about the situation and what we plan for the future. Undoubtedly, the territories will be liberated. Thank you. Any other questions? So, Tokyo headquarters, could you please now see it, the temporarily occupied territories after the full scale of invasion of Russia against the territory of Ukraine, in the process of self-organization, can we see some of the norms of the case law among the or any other law forms in the self-organization of the population? Who are you asking? I'm asking Ms. Hanna Malyar. Okay. Which norms do you mean? Which norms do you mean of the law? Let's clarify that. The norms, the law norms of the custom law, which are the population is creating itself under occupation. Do you mean some, I don't know, lynching or marriages? I don't know. It can be the norm of this custom law as well. I don't know what you mean. Okay, well, let alone the jokes. At the temporarily occupied territories, we have the very complicated situation for our citizens because Russia is forcefully imposing their authorities and is trying to provide the same totalitarian regimen as Russia has, and Ukrainians are the free nation. Ukrainians cannot live under such conditions. I've already mentioned that the Russians are trying to integrate themselves into all of the spheres of life at the temporarily occupied territories to Russian Federation, but they failed to do that thanks to the resistance of the local population of our Ukrainian citizens who are now there. I guess that it's a bit too early to speak about custom law or anything like that. I think that the resistance of our citizens is relevant now, and they don't want to cooperate with the enemy. Thank you. Any other questions?
This is NHK from Japan. Hi, this is NHK from Japan. We saw some reports that in Beach Hold this morning, some attack has happened. Could you explain what was target and how many people were injured or some casualties?
Пан Олексій, мабуть, до вас.
Oleksiy, is this the question to you? I guess so. As far as I understand, you mean the shellings of our territories of Kiev region and Chernihiv region, right? Yes, okay. Yes, really, about 5 a.m. the adversary had the missile hits of 6 cruise missiles of caliber against the military unit in Lutizh of Kiev region. As of today, we have the information that 3 buildings, 1 building is destroyed and 2 buildings were damaged. Besides that, 1 cruise missile was hit down in the air. The adversary had the missile hit from the Black Sea. As for Chernihiv region, since 5:25 till 6:30 a.m., the settlement of Honcharivsky of Chernihiv region was also under shelling. There was the missile shelling and MLRS shelling, multiple launch rocket system. About 20 shells were hitting the positions of our troops. As of now, we know that the launch was done from Zyabrovka of Republic of Belarus. There are some of the casualties, but we need to clarify them. And the second part of the question, what's the aim? What was the aim of such attacks? Would they just go on with the genocide of our nation? That's it. Any other questions? I would like to thank the government of Japan for the equipment, medical equipment for our medical hospitals. And last week we had the meeting with the representative of UNOPS who is working with the government of Japan, and we know about the programs which are now implemented by the government of Japan to support Ukraine. Thank you so much for that. Any other questions? Hello, Inform Agency Reuters. Can Ukraine officially confirm that the bridge, Antonivsky Bridge, cannot function as a transport artery both for the civilians and the military, the occupying forces? And how is it connected with the counter-offensive in the south of Ukraine? Thank you. Well, directly, the significance of Antonivsky Bridge for the defense of the adversary and for the offensive of our forces has really great significance. Our forces and measures are used to deprive the adversary of the opportunity to conduct the shellings of our territories. So we are firing against the warehouses and arsenals of the adversaries created at the temporarily occupied territories. And one of the tasks is to cut their logistics supplies and the ways of supply of ammunition, the ways of the reserve troops to the frontline combat areas. Yes, we have conducted certain impact against the Antonivsky Bridge. The adversary, it was done for more than once. The adversary was trying to restore it, to reconstruct it further. We also had some measures, additional measures. So as for now, there is a substantial damage to the construction of the bridges. We can foresee that the adversary will try to reconstruct, to restore the bridge. We are ready for that. And you will hear about our next actions later. I thank you. We had Oleksiy Hromov, Leonid Baran, Hanna Malyar, and Oleksiy Nadtochiy. Thank you, dear friends, again. I congratulate you with our holiday. We believe in our armed forces and working together for the victory. Glory to Ukraine.